Good morning.
Good morning.
We are on session number 87. In our last session, we started a letter from HPB, but going back just a little bit, in that same session, we read a letter from KH to Senate dated early in November 1884. Then he didn't receive any letters. He was in London. HPB was back at Adyar, and no letters. Then he received a letter from HPB, which she wrote on March 17th, 1885. We don't know when he actually received it. The assumption is that she sent it by boat, and he would have received it in April sometime. We don't know for sure. So, quite a few months in between. HPB is very, very ill, and everything is going wrong at Adyar. The missionaries have created havoc. Madame Coulomb did her part to stir things up. And now we found out that Hume has made the trip down to Adyar to put in his 2 cents. He was the one behind the scenes directing all of the chaos that was going on in London for the past 2 years. He had decided, remember, that either he was going to force the Mahatmas to teach him how to do phenomena, or he was going to destroy the Theosophical Society, the Mahatmas, and HPB, and Olcott. The whole thing. He wanted it destroyed.
His way or the highway.
This is his revenge tour. Yeah, be careful when you make a bully angry, because they will seek revenge. All right, we learned another thing, something that HPB mentioned. She said, "Happy Damodar, he went to the land of bliss, to Tibet, and must be now far away in the regions of our masters. No one will ever see him now, I expect." So I'm going to have Paul read a little bit about Damodar and his trip to Tibet. It took quite a while. This comes from a book by Sven Eck. It's called Damodar and the Pioneers of the Theosophical Movement. A very good book for any student to read. In this, he tells about Damodar leaving Adyar, Madras, by ship in February of 1885. He had finally, after 5.5 years, received permission from KH to join him in Tibet. Getting into Tibet was no easy feat in those days. They were very careful about protecting their borders. So this had to be done under great secrecy. He first went up to Calcutta, then he wanted to visit some of the branches up in that area of India. So he went by train inland. Then he went back to Calcutta and began in April his final trip into Tibet. The Mahatmas had sent an emissary to meet him somewhere along the way. It may have been Darjeeling or somewhere along that area, to give him instructions, because it all had to be handled very, very carefully, or if he got caught, it would be even more difficult to make a second attempt. So everything was very carefully orchestrated. And I'm going to have Paul read something that Colonel Olcott wrote about this trip.
A nobler heart never beat in a human breast, and his departure was one of the hardest blows we ever received. He had almost broken down his constitution by incessant official work, and when leaving Adyar had begun to spit blood and show signs of a rapid decline.
He always had poor health.
Damodar had poor health?
Yes.
Oh.
And he had what they call consumption or tuberculosis. So that's what he's referring to.
With undaunted courage, he undertook the hard journey across the Himalayas, indifferent to the biting cold, the drifted snow, the lack of shelter and food, intent upon reaching the Guru who he had first seen in his youth when lying on a sickbed, of whom he had lost sight for many years, but whom he had recovered soon after joining the Theosophical Society, as his spiritual faculties developed and he was able to seek him in the Sukshma Sharira.
I'm not sure what that is. I didn't look it up. Now, when he reached the border, this is where everything had to be handled very, very carefully. So he was given instructions previously that at a certain point, the guides who had taken him that far were going to drop off and go back into India. And he would continue, and I don't know if he was completely alone or if there was still someone guiding him, but he would continue for 2 days. And then after 2 days of travel, he would be met by a group from Tibet to further continue the journey. In the meantime, he left everything he had behind in case he got caught. He gave his diary to these guides that had accompanied him to the point where he was going to be going on by himself. He got rid of most of his clothes that he had been wearing that would have identified him as being somebody foreign to the Tibetan area. So he wore the outfit of a Tibetan pilgrim at that point, basically got rid of everything. He had a few chapatis to eat, and that was it. And he continued on his own for 2 days. And then the final transfer took place.
The last that was seen of him by the coolies was when, with face turned towards the Tibetan frontier, he trudged painfully on and disappeared behind a turning of the road. After
He left, and no word was heard from him for a while. Rumors began to circulate that he died, and that these stupid theosophists killed him by their ideas of Mahatmas, and he was dumb enough to follow their advice and tried to find them and died in the process. They claimed that they found all of the clothing that he had been wearing, and that they found a frozen body that was most likely him. And that circulated among all of the enemies of the Theosophical Society, and even many of the members of the society began to believe that. But HPB wasn't worried, and we'll find out a little bit later what happened, but for months and months and months, there was no word whatsoever.
It said that he hadn't seen the master since he was on a sickbed as a child, but I thought he had been with them. We had heard stories of that.
Right, but what was meant was that in between when he was a child and when he was 23 years old, when he found Theosophy, that's when he didn't.
Okay.
He saw them 2 or 3 times when he was a child, and then there was a period of many years. He was, remember, from a wealthy family, a Zamindar family. And there's a portrait of him. We'll put it up on the screen. It's a painting of him as a young man in opulent surroundings, in the pose of someone who is from a very well-to-do and respected family in India. That was what he gave up, the wealth and the position, in order to become a chela of KH. Let's continue the letter. In the last part of what we read last time, she had said that this is where the phenomena led us. Now we have to deal with the consequences of it. And she also said that Hume has been hanging around and coming to visit quite often. Now, HPB is sick in bed. She has been for days. And so Hume, snooping around, is taking advantage of the fact that she's incapacitated. Olcott was out traveling in Burma and Ceylon and other countries. She was there sick as could be, and Hume was there manipulating things. So let's pick up the story there.
Mr. Hume wants to save the society and has found a way. Yesterday, he called a council meeting composed of Raghunath Rao, Subba Rao, Srinivas Rao, the Honorable Subramanya Iyer, and Rama Iyer, all leaders of Hindus. Then, having selected Raghunath Rao as chairman, and the audience being composed of the two Cooper Oakleys, Hartman, and the chelas, he gave him a paper.
So he, on his own, while Olcott was gone and HPB incapacitated, called a meeting of the council members for the TS. And he says, I have a proposal for you. And they're like, all right.
In it, he proposed to save the society. He insisted as falling to pieces after the, quote, revelations, though not one fellow has yet resigned. To force Colonel Olcott, Madame Blavatsky, Damodar, who is absent, Babaji, Bhavani Rao, Ananda, Ramaswamy, etc., in all 16 persons to resign, as they were all frauds and accomplices, since many of them asserted they knew the masters independently of me and that the masters did not exist.
All right, so here's his proposal, among other things. Olcott resigns. HPB resigns. 16 of the chelas, the native Indian chelas, resign because they lied. There are no Mahatmas, and they are obviously confederates of this lie.
So who does Hume think he was talking to if he doesn't believe they were...
I don't know why,
masters.
But keep in mind that 2 years ago, he, after giving the Mahatmas an ultimatum and they didn't accept it, said, well, to heck with you. I'll find my own guru who will teach me these secrets. So he found this Swami of Almora. Well, guess what? After a few months, his Swami died. And so he had no Swami anymore. But fortunately, he did their 42-day program of developing psychic abilities of some sort, and he decided he was now a Mahatma himself. So he, as we learned at some point after that, was basically in the hands of the Drugpas. They were manipulating him psychically because he was angry, he was looking for revenge, and he was a prime candidate to be manipulated psychically. And he was falling right into the trap. So he's crazy, basically.
So it's not that he doesn't think they exist. He's basically lying.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Wow. He's accusing them of lying, and he's lying.
Yes.
Imagine
that.
Imagine that. The headquarters must be sold, and in its place, a new Scientifico, Philosophico, Humanitarian Theosophical Society instituted.
I wonder who would be in charge of that.
Oh, maybe some guy named Hume, I don't know. I was not present at the meeting, for I am confined to my room, but the counselors came to me in a body after the proceedings. Instead of accepting the proposal and proclaiming the phenomena of fraud, as Mr. Hume said they all had done, Raghunath Rao rejected the paper, throwing it aside in disgust. Good. They all believed in the Mahatmas, he said, and the phenomena they had witnessed personally, but would have their names desecrated no more. Phenomena must be prohibited from now on, and if they happen independently, must not be talked about under penalty of expulsion. They declined to ask the founders to resign. They saw no reason for it. Mr. Hume is a strange savior.
So the chelas, many of them knew the Mahatmas. They had seen them in their astral body, and some of them in their physical body. One of those 16 was Ramaswamy, the one who had traveled to Sikkim and had met Moria, remember? So some of them knew them intimately. Of course, they're not going to denounce them. But they had never been in agreement with teaching these secrets to Europeans. So they're like, this is what happens now. They wanted to go back to not making any information about the Mahatmas available to Europeans. They were tired of it.
Therefore, no more phenomena, at least here in India. While Maskelyne and Cook produce theirs far better and are paid for it, we come out second best and are ridiculed for them.
Maskelyne and Cook were the Siegfried and Roy of the time. They performed magic. And after Theosophy came along, guess what they did? They started performing things that the Theosophists did, making things appear magically and reading letters and stuff like that.
Oh, jeez.
So they made a heyday out of parodying the Theosophists.
Wow. Mr. Hume is more liberal than the Padres. They call Olcott a credulous fool, but undeniably an honest man, and he declared that since Olcott swears to have seen the masters, he must be a dishonest man, and since he got his pearl pin at the pawnbrokers at Bombay, he must be, by implication, a thief too, though Hume denies this.
In the last session, we talked about this brooch, pearl brooch or pin, and it was similar to one that HPB had repaired and had sent to her sister in Russia. Hume, who never believed that phenomenon, even when it happened at his own house in 1881, decided that he was going to investigate it. So he sent people to the jeweler that HPB had repair the other pin that she sent to her sister and verify that it was the same pin that had appeared in Shimla.
Such is, in brief, the present situation. It began at Shimla, opening with the first act, and now comes the epilogue that will soon finish with my death. Although I suddenly got better, thanks to Master's protecting hand, I carry 2 mortal diseases in me which are not cured, heart and kidneys. Oh gosh. At any moment, the former can have a rupture, and the latter carry me away in a few days. I will not see another year. Wow.
The way she was going, yeah, it certainly looked like her days were numbered. And she's under tremendous stress. Mm-hmm. This, what Hume has done, has destroyed her health. And he's really accomplishing his goal. He's destroying the Theosophical Society. He is destroying belief in the masters. He is absolutely accomplishing his goal.
And this is why the masters remain secret, because they refuse to allow 1 or 1,000,000 people to send such negative energy towards them like HPB is receiving. Mm-hmm. And it has a real effect. That's not magic. Anybody, any human would receive the effects of negative thoughts and intentions, even if you don't believe in any metaphysics. It's true.
Right.
If you direct your negative thoughts all day long at someone, they're going to feel it, but it's real.
It's the sender that is affected more than anything.
Hume is probably extremely chaotic in his inner being.
I would really hate to have his karma. Mm-hmm. What he is creating after all the Mahatmas did for him is unbelievable. And yet, they never, ever stopped loving him and caring about him.
That shows the character. His karma, for sure. His time in Kama Loka, I'm sure, was excruciating. And then, of course, the karma for many lifetimes to come.
And here's the other thing. He is a prime candidate for
chelasship in the future.
Yes, but also for the 8th sphere.
Oh, gosh, right. Avicii.
He is a prime candidate for that if he continues on this left-hand path that he has adopted. He is absolutely on the left-hand path now.
It seems as though someone who does end up going that sad route, it's not just one lifetime that can do that, do you think? I don't think anyone could be that bad in one lifetime, probably.
No, not likely.
Probably. Do you think this is his first lifetime being a bad boy?
No, but This is why the Mahatmas really do not like to talk about Avicii and the people who end up there. It's because they are personally involved with some of those people. They have cared for them and loved them for lifetime after lifetime and have seen them swerve from the right-hand path to the left and follow it all the way down. So to them, it's very personal.
I will not see another year. All this is due to 5 years of constant anguish, worry, and repressed emotion. A Gladstone may be called a fraud and laugh at it. I can't. Say what you may, Mr. Sinnott.
Mr. Gladstone had been prime minister more than once in England and was highly revered by the champions of the working class people. He wasn't a conservative, he was more of a liberal and a progressive. So he was used to being out in public and being harassed and spoken ill of. He might be able to withstand that, but it does affect me, says HPB.
And now to your business. I have never, before beginning the service for you and Mr. Hume, transmitted and received letters to and from masters except for myself. If you had any idea of the difficulties or the modus operandi, you would not have consented to be in my place. Yeah, not many people would.
No.
And yet I never refused, of course. The shrine was thought of to facilitate the transmission, and now hundreds come to pray and beg to put their letters inside.
Now, this is obviously a new shrine.
Hundreds?
Oh,
Really?
you know how she exaggerates.
Yes, okay. As you know, and is proved to all except Mr. Hodgson, who finds contradictions, all received answers without my leaving the room, and often in different languages. It is this that, unable to account for, Mr. Hume calls a wholesale collective fraud because, in his mind, since the masters do not exist, and have never written a single letter received, then the logical conclusion is that it is the whole staff, everyone at the headquarters, Damodar, Babaji, Subbarao, all who helped me to write the letters and pass them through the whole. Even Hodgson finds the idea preposterous. This is just crazy. No one can believe Hume at this point, I don't think.
It's a real mess. I found out recently, too, that it was Franz Hartmann who was the one who decided to destroy the shrine and to repair everything. Mm-hmm. But also, if you do a little bit of background research, he was very similar to Hume.
Oh, gosh.
He had visions of grandeur for himself, and he really wanted to learn how to do phenomena. He was yet again one of these who harassed her to teach him how to do phenomena. He actually received several letters from the Mahatmas. We don't have them, unfortunately, that I'm aware of. There may be one or two, but he did receive several letters, and he was trying to force HPB to teach him. So when she didn't, he also, in the back of his mind, thought he could manipulate her. And I am quite sure that he destroyed the shrine and did all of the covering up of what had been done in order to make his job easier of doing what Hume was planning to do, take over.
You know the concept of the guru traveling around and gathering people would gather and he would present teachings and such, kind of like Jesus, how he did. Why do you think the masters didn't do any of that? What if they showed up around the TS headquarters once in a while to give some teachings? Couldn't that have helped?
They did, but to very small groups of people. And it was usually a very small event. This happened several times on the roof at Adyar. 4, 5, or 6 or 7 students would be there talking, and one of them would appear and would either deliver something or request time with HPB, but they didn't really deliver a sermon or a discussion. That they didn't.
I know that's not their style, and we know very well the reason that they're secluded. We know that. But from time to time, I just wonder, could that have helped if they did make appearances? Not like, oh, let's make fanfare about it, but just every so often, hi, I'm here to share some things, and people would come. I mean, far less qualified individuals have huge followings because they're sensational, and it would be so different if these guys might have done. I wonder if that would have helped.
They had too much experience. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
They predicted what did happen, and that wouldn't have made it any better. They would have opened themselves up to even more ridicule and even more anger. No, I can completely understand why they protect themselves. They have to.
I'm not even suggesting that they would do phenomena. It's a different path. I'm just thinking if from the beginning they wouldn't have done any phenomena, but come out a few times and given talks or teachings, just themselves in their bodies.
I am pretty sure they did that with their Indian chelas, not with the Europeans, because they didn't feel that they had enough ability to reach them. That's why they were really focused on Sinnett. If we can get him in our camp, and if we can figure out a way to transmit information to him, let him be the front guy.
I'm not trying to derail us. I'm just seeing the whole picture here since we're towards the end. And the phenomena of the East being brought to the West did happen in an exoteric way. Many people, Yogananda in his book Autobiography of a Yogi talks about his journeys to the West. Swami Vivekananda was the guy who went to the World's Fair. I don't remember what year that was. I think that was even before this.
1893.
Well, that was right. So he physically was revered. Oh, look at this amazing, exotic East Indian guy. He may have had a lot of knowledge or not, but he physically went and started some good stuff, I think. It's interesting to see how different methods, different teachings were transmitted. It's just an experiment, right? They're all experiments.
Yes, and it's all a learning process, both for the Mahatmas and for us.
And now to the deception practiced on Mr. Arthur Gebhard, of which I learned from the Mahatma and Arthur's own letter sent to me.
Arthur Gebhard was one of Gustav and Madame Gebhard's sons. He was very interested in theosophy. I think he was in his 30s at the time. He wasn't married yet, but he struck up a friendship with Mohini in Europe. And the two of them, at this point, were becoming disenchanted with HPB. We'll learn more about that later, but he did cause quite a bit of trouble later.
This fraud, coupled with the revelations and hints about others insinuated by kitten-like Mrs. Holloway, must have impressed a figure of HPB of exquisite honorability and honesty on poor, dear Mrs. Gebhard.
And she's being sarcastic here because she loves Mrs. Gebhard. And Mrs. Gebhard's son is creating havoc.
Well, persons who are on the eve of their death do not generally fib and say lies. I hope you will give me credit for speaking the truth. Arthur Gebhard is not the only one to suspect and accuse me of fraud. Say then to the friends who may have received letters from the masters through me, that I never was a deceiver, that I never played tricks on them. I have often facilitated phenomena of letter transmission by easier but still occult means. But as none of the theosophists except occultists know anything of either difficult or easy means of occult transmission, nor are they acquainted with occult laws. Everything is suspicious to them. Yeah, I know people like that. Mm-hmm. Take, for instance, this illustration, transmission by mechanical thought transference, in contrast with the conscious method.
This is really interesting. Pay attention. She's going to give us two examples of how transmissions occur.
She calls the first mechanical thought transference in contrast with the conscious method. Interesting.
Yes.
The former, the mechanical, is produced by first calling the attention of a chela or the Mahatma. Okay.
All right. So psychically, they sent out a signal.
A little poke. Hey.
Hey, anybody, are you available? And then what happens?
The letter must be opened, and every line of it passed over the forehead.
So,
There's more.
this is what, but let's see that. Every line passed over the forehead. Here's the letter. I just opened it. Now, this is what happens.
That way or vertically?
Every line.
So left to right and, okay.
The third eye,
Wow.
I don't know if it's left to right to left, but this is a fax machine.
Wow.
It's reading it line by line by line. And it's exactly that.
Wow. There's more.
Yes.
Every line of it passed over the forehead, holding the breath.
Holding the breath.
And never taking off the part of the letter from the latter until a bell notifies it is read and noted.
Okay, so one line at a time, and you don't take it off the forehead until you hear the bell that says, okay, got it.
So there's a bell for each line?
Yes.
And then another breath is taken and held for the second line?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a time-consuming
Yes,
process.
it is.
Breath being held. So prana...
I don't know how fast that can happen.
Yeah. So the breath, so prana is meant to become still and held to facilitate that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, let's keep going.
Wow. Okay. And can other people hear the bell or just the transmitter?
Probably not.
So the chela or the receiver is causing the bell to sound for her. She's not doing it.
Right. So she's sending it.
She's waiting for the bell.
And then
Okay.
waiting. The bell means, okay, we got...
Okay.
You
It's not
can
her.
continue.
Okay. Interesting. Wow. The other mode, so now this is the conscious method. The other mode is to impress every sentence of the letter, consciously of course, still mechanically on the brain, and then send it phrase by phrase to the other person on the other end of the line.
So in this case, she is reading it, but kind of in a mechanical fashion. She's not thinking of all the words so much as she is simply reading it, impressing it on the brain, and then the receiver has to read it from her brain.
She's not reading it to understand the concept. She's just mechanically like a robot kind of.
Right, exactly. It's like a scanner
Yeah.
reading it. It doesn't do any thinking. It
Right.
just records it.
This, of course, if the sender permits you to read it and believes in your honesty that you read it mechanically, only reproducing the form of the words and lines on your brain and not the meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But in both instances, the letter must be opened and then burnt with what we call virgin fire. What the heck? Lit neither with matches, brimstone, nor any preparation, but rubbed with a resinous, transparent little stone, a ball that no naked hand must touch.
There is very little information available about that, but obviously it is some little stone-like object that must never be touched by a naked hand, so I don't know if they wear gloves or manipulate it with something else. But
Virgin fire.
so they record this by the brain, and she's going to tell you why they do two different processes. And then they burn it. The letter itself started with not a match or a candle or anything else, but with this stone-like object that lights it and burns it.
I wonder if it actually is fire. Is it really?
It could be an etheric form of fire.
I wonder if the letter disintegrates then, or if it's...
Keep reading.
Okay. This is done for the ashes, which, while the paper burns, become immediately invisible.
Yeah,
Which they should not if the paper were lit otherwise,
which they would not if it had been lit otherwise, yeah.
because they would remain due to their weight and grossness in the surrounding atmosphere, instead of being transferred instantaneously to the receiver.
So by doing it that method, rather than lighting a flame, it doesn't create physical ashes.
Right.
It literally disintegrates and then is transmitted.
While the paper burns, the ashes become immediately invisible, which transferred instantaneously to the receiver. I wonder why the paper needs to be done that way. If it's already been transmitted, why would the physical paper need to go as well?
Keep reading.
Very next sentence. This double process is...
You would think you would learn.
This double process is done for double security. For the words transmitted from one brain to another or to the akasha near the Mahatma or chela, may some of them be omitted, whole words slip out, etc., and the ashes not be perfectly transmitted, and in this way, one corrects the other. Wow. Jeez. I cannot do that, and therefore speak of it only as an example of how deception can easily be attributed. She cannot do that. Of course she can do that.
She apparently doesn't use that method. So what she's saying is that she has a different method.
But that was two methods, the third eye scanner or the mechanical.
So I don't know if she can do the first but not the second. She obviously doesn't do the second one because she just said, I can't do that.
Okay.
But here's the other thing. In her case, and remember, she has powers that almost no other person has. They are able to take from wherever she happens to be an object. So, for example, Sinnett sends her a letter, and inside he's got an envelope that is for KH, and either before or after she receives it, the Mahatma takes that. So they have a method that doesn't even correspond with either of these two.
Mm-hmm. Imagine A giving a letter for the Mahatma to B.
She's talking about two people, A and B.
B then goes into the adjoining room and opening the letter, not one word of which he will remember, if he is a true chela and an honest man, transmits it to his brain by one of the two methods, sending one sentence after the other on the current, and then proceeds to burn the letter. So the burning takes place after both of those first two methods. Then. Mm-hmm. Perhaps he has forgotten the virgin stone in his room. Inadvertently leaving the opened letter on the table, he leaves for a few minutes. During that time, A, impatient and probably suspicious, enters the room. He sees his opened letter on the table. He will either take it and make an expose, or leave it and then afterward ask B if he has burnt it, whether or not he sent his letter.
So this is a whole hypothetical situation, and she's, remember, very ill, and she's kind of rambling, but I wanted everyone to see her state of mind, so I left a lot of this in. But she's showing how easy it is for someone to become suspicious of this process.
Mm-hmm. Of course, B will answer that he has transmitted it.
And remember that anyone who is trusted to do this doesn't remember what they read. And the Europeans cannot believe that. They don't believe it. Oh, she obviously knows everything that is transmitted to and from her. No, she doesn't.
Then will come the expose, which the consequences you may imagine, or A will hold his tongue and do as many do, forever consider B a fraud. This is one instance out of many, and a real one given to me as a caution by Master.
And the reason she's giving this information is because of Arthur Gebhard.
There's a funny thing in Mr. Gebhard's letter, very funny and suggestive. For instance, recounting in it how he gave me the letter and 6 hours later, I had told him it was gone. He adds, 4 days later, Colonel wrote to HPB saying that his master appeared and said that KH had said, see original sent back to you. But then the good colonel must also be a fraud, a confederate of mine, an accomplice. Or is it my master who mystifies Mr. Arthur Gebhard, or what? And then again, HPB is a fraud, although I will never deny her excellent qualities.
That's something that Arthur Gebhard said.
The, quote, excellent qualities of a fraud is something startling and original at all events.
Yeah, so he's very suspicious of her and not believing everything that she tells him.
Mm-hmm. Thus, you will please tell Mr. Arthur Gebhard that we are two frauds, if any, and also this, Mahatma K.H. has received but never read his letter for the simple reason that he was prevented by his promise to the Chohan never to read a letter from any theosophist until his return from his mission to China, where he was at the time.
Remember when he was traveling for a long period of time, and it was never revealed what his main object was. And the reason was because he went to China, and they didn't want that to become known. Now we know where he had been.
This he now was willing to tell me to help justify me, as he says. He had forbidden me most strictly to send him any more letters until further orders. Since Master, at Arthur G.'s urgent request, took it upon himself, for reasons best known to himself, I had nothing to do but to obey. I took the letter and put it in a drawer full of papers. When I looked for it, I found it was gone. At least I did not see it, and said so to him. But before going to bed, taking out an envelope, I found his letter still there, though in the morning it really was gone. Now, if my memory is right, I showed Olcott's letter to Madame Gebhard, in which he speaks of what Master said. I had not read Gebhard's letter, and may have taken the words as an answer to this letter. As it is, I now haven't the faintest recollection of the whole message. One thing I do know, and Madame Gebhard will corroborate it, she spoke to me in London, before going to Paris, of the terrible quarrels between Arthur G. and his father, and also to Olcott, repeatedly.
So, yeah, Mrs. Gebhard, who was a real sweetheart, confided in HPB that Arthur and his father were having terrible quarrels about theosophy and about the phenomena and everything that had occurred.
She had expressed the hope that the Mahatma would interfere on her behalf, and these words may have related to this and not at all to the letter. How can I remember? Olcott may have heard imperfectly, or I muddled the thing up. 100 different possible scenarios may have happened. The only fraud, then, is in my telling him an unconscious untruth about the letter going 6 hours later, when it was actually taken in the morning. To this, I plead guilty.
This is what they have to deal with.
So
these
crazy.
petty objections and suppositions that these Europeans come up with. There is no room for any mistakes at all in their mind. So the Mahatmas and the Asian chelas are becoming very, very frustrated with these Europeans.
But just as in the Hume pearl pin affair, there is something more implied than mere fraud in the production of phenomena. If I have bamboozled Madame Gebhard and him in this, then I become right away a swindler. I have received hospitality at their house for months. They have nursed me through my sickness, and have not permitted me to pay the doctor, covered me with rich presents, honors, and kindnesses, for all of which I repay with deception.
Right.
O powers of heaven, truth and justice, may Mr. Arthur Gebhard's karma prove light to him. I forgive him for the sake of his mother and father, whom I will love and respect to my last hour. Please give these my parting words to Madame Gebhard. I have nothing more to say.
So remember, she's at Adyar. Senate is in London, and so he's her contact in Europe right now.
It is useless, Mr. Sinnett. The Theosophical Society shall live here in India forever. It seems doomed in Europe because I am doomed. Oh. It hangs on your esoteric Buddhism and the occult world. Esoteric Buddhism was his book.
Both of them.
Both of them were his books, yes. And if Mahatmas are myths, I, the author of all those letters, am proclaimed a fraud, and worse, by the PRS, How can the London Lodge live?
So she always gets the name wrong. It's the Society for Psychical Research, SPR.
Oh.
But she always got the order incorrect, PRS.
That's funny.
And that's what, in fact, the SPR did say in their report, that she was a fraud, that she invented the Mahatmas, that every single one of these letters were written by her hand. And she said later, I must be a genius if they give me that power to invent more than 2 Mahatmas and keep each character very distinct because they have different writing styles, their handwriting is different, their teachings are different. If I created that, I am a genius. And that's how stupid the people in the SPR were. Sorry, but the Europeans weren't nearly as bright as they thought they were.
What became of that group? Did it continue?
It's in existence today. And 100 years after this, they issued a little disclaimer. Oh, that was just his opinion. Hodgson, the one who investigated, we don't agree with that. BS. The Society for Psychical Research funded the publication of a book that was very derogatory against HPB. We'll find about that later. Another chela of the Mahatmas and of hers, Solovyov, a Russian, a fellow countryman of hers, wanted to learn how to do phenomena. And when she told him it wasn't possible, he got angry and sought his revenge. One more.
What decade did that book come out? The one that was derogatory?
Right after she died. He began writing while she was still living against her in Russia. And then as soon as she died, he unleashed and became even more derogatory in his writing. And the SPR said, hey, we can use that material. We'll pay to have you turn that into a book. And so they did. It's called A Modern Priestess of Isis, if you want to read it. I used to have a copy of it, but I didn't like the aura of it in my house, so I threw it away. I made sure it did not go to someone else who could read it. I threw it away in the trash.
It's so sad how much material is derogatory out there about her. It's so bizarre. If they would actually just read a little bit more, I don't see any evidence of her being bad, being evil. None.
I used to be a fan of Sam Harris.
Yeah.
He wrote a book about fraud in religion and included a short segment in it about HPB. And what did he report? She was a total fraud. She was fat. She was a charlatan. It's all there in the report from the Society for Psychical Research. Read it yourself.
This day, does the Society for Psychical Research still make members? Are they doing teachings?
Oh, yeah. They are very much in existence in London and doing their work and whatever they do. I ignore them completely.
I wonder if they have any guidance from any
Mahatmas?
Not our Mahatmas. Maybe the other brothers. Yeah.
I don't know. They definitely had some guidance from the Dugpas in 1885.
Jeez. I told you, for I felt, as I always feel, that this investigation of Mr. Hodgson's will be fatal. He is the most excellent, truthful, expert young man, but how can he recognize truth from lie when there is a thick net of conspiracy around him? At first, when he visited the headquarters and the padres could not very well get hold of him, he seemed all right.
So he was actually a guest of theirs at the headquarters in Adyar. And he was very open. He was a young man. And he was impressed with all of the stories of the phenomena. And then Hume got his hands on him. Then Hume came down, and everything changed. So let's continue.
His accounts were favorable, and then he was caught. We have our informants who followed the missionaries closely. You in England may laugh. We do not. We know that the conspiracy is not one to laugh at. The 30,000 padres of India are all joined against us. It is their last card they play, either they or we. There was 72,000 rupees collected in 1 week in Bombay.
1 week, they collected 72,000 rupees. Probably a few $1,000s, right? Guess again. 72,000 rupees in 1885 was about $1 million today.
Wow.
And it was to fund an investigation. Why would they need $1 million to fund an investigation? Was it to pay off some people like Madame Coulomb? To manufacture evidence, maybe? You can do quite a bit with $1 million.
And who is spearheading that? Not Hume. The Padres.
The Padres are the Christian missionaries, the English Anglican missionaries who are there to convert all of India to Christianity.
There were 72,000 rupees collected in 1 week in Bombay to conduct the investigations against the so-called founders of the TS. All the judges of the land are against us. Skeptics and nominal Christians, freethinkers, and CS snobs.
I couldn't figure out CS, but I left it in there in case any of our viewers know what CS stands for. I thought it might be Christian Science, but they weren't active at the time in India.
My very name stinks in their nostrils, and now comes the old sleeping beauty on the scene again. I am, after all, a Russian spy.
Yeah, so this comes back to haunt her yet again. 3 years ago, the British were following her and Olcott in their trip around India because they suspected that she was a Russian spy.
This is interesting. I didn't know that term was a thing back then. I thought the whole Russian spy thing happened during the Cold War.
It has been going on for decades and centuries. No, the rest of Europe distrusted Russia because it was kind of Asian and kind of European. Right. They're not really us, but they sort of are.
I didn't realize that they were always viewed like that. I thought it happened during the Cold War. Okay.
Lots of suspicion. And Russia was fighting with China and
Right. Now, this was before the Bolsheviks, so this is way before the fall of monarchy.
Right. Oh, a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But HPB, remember, was very devoted to the Russian people and her culture. She was very connected with that. And she was devastated when the Tsar, Alexander II, was assassinated. And the Europeans, meaning Hume, made fun of her because she was in mourning for weeks over it.
Last night, the Cooper Oakleys dined with Hume at the Garstons and were told very seriously that the government was going to shadow me once more, that they had information, perhaps from the Coulombs, and that I had, quote, to be watched. Hume laughed, and the Cooper Oakleys protested. It was very serious in view of the Russians crossing into Kabul, Afghanistan, or something of that sort.
So the Russians, who had taken over not too long previously the whole territory of what is now Turkestan, had their eyes on Afghanistan. They had invaded a fort just across the border into Afghanistan.
Wow.
And so now the whole world was upset about that and saying, now they're going to take over Afghanistan. So that was the reason for that comment.
An old and a dying woman confined to her room, forbidden to climb a few steps lest her heart should burst, never reading a paper for fear of finding in it the most vile personal abuse, receiving letters from Russia only from relatives, a spy, a dangerous character.
So what she's saying is, in 1885, how would the government of Russia be communicating with me? There weren't any satellites, there weren't any cell phones. They would have to send a letter. And the only letters I receive from Russia are from my relatives. Do you think they're spies for the government? She said it makes no sense.
Oh, Britishers of India, where is your valor?
Yeah, exactly. Where is your valor?
Notwithstanding Hume, their friend Hodgson, and all the evidence, the Cooper Oakleys do not believe me a fraud. They have full confidence in the masters. Nothing, they say, will make them doubt their existence, and, apart from some little unpleasantness due to gossip about private affairs, they are staunch theosophists, and, as they say, my best friends. Well and good, I believe. O Lord, help thou my unbelief. How can I believe anyone, my friend, at such a moment? It is only he who knows, as he knows that he lives and breathes, that our Mahatmas exist and that phenomena are real. Who can sympathize with me and look upon me as a martyr? Pamphlets by reverends, books and articles exposing me from head to foot appear every day. Theosophy unveiled, Madame Blavatsky exposed, the theosophical humbug before the world, Christ against Mahatmas, etc., etc.
These were all titles of different exposés about the society and her.
You who knew India well, Mr. Sinnett, you think it difficult to get false witnesses here? They have all the advantages over us. They, the enemies, work night and day, flooding the country with literature against us. And we sit motionless and only quarrel within the theosophical headquarters. Olcott is considered a fool, detested by the Cooper Oakleys for some mistakes that really he could not help, and adored by the Hindus. And now, after the arrival of Hume, I come for my share.
Yeah, first they abused Olcott, and now that I'm here, I get my share of it.
My friends, the Cooper Oakleys, advise me to resign, while the Hindus say they will all leave if I do. I must resign, because being thought a Russian spy, I endanger the society. She's basically describing the end here. Is this really what's happening right now? I mean, is this
Yes,
kind of the
absolutely. Even the members are starting to say, look, you're going to have to resign. You're going to have to remove yourself from this whole imbroglio. It's a terrible shame that theosophy is being destroyed right before our eyes, and the only thing you can do is remove yourself from it.
Even though that's exactly what Hume is trying to do.
Exactly. And that's his goal, like anyone in his position, is to divide and conquer. So get them fighting amongst themselves, and then I can swoop in and take over.
Because I endanger the society. Such is my life during my convalescence, when every emotion, says the doctor, may prove fatal. Wow. So much the better. Then I will resign de facto. But then they forget that so far I am the only link between the Europeans and the Mahatmas.
Yeah, that's a big mistake there. And they somehow blithely ignored that for years. She was their only connection. The Indian chelas didn't care because they had their independent connection with the Mahatmas. The Europeans had one single source. And they want her gone.
The Hindus do not care. Dozens of them are chelas. Hundreds know them. But just as in the case of Subba Rao, they would sooner die than speak of their masters. Wow. Hume could get nothing from Subba Rao, though everyone knows what he is.
He's a very high chela of Master Morya. Mm-hmm. And Hume knows that too. But he wasn't going to reveal anything to Hume.
The other night, he received a long letter from my master in the meeting room when Hume voted for my resignation. They had just voted that there should be no phenomena anymore, and that Mahatmas never be spoken about. The letter was in Telugu, they say.
So not even the language that HPB knows. They're not going to share it. They don't share that sort of thing.
Though they stand by me and will do so to the last, they accuse me of having desecrated the truth and the masters by having been the means of the occult world and esoteric Buddhism. Do not count on the Hindus, you of the London Lodge, for I am dead.
Meaning she's useless. She's gone. You may as well consider me dead.
Say goodbye to the masters. Say it even now, all perhaps but one exception. For I have pledged my word to my Hindu brothers, the occultists, never to mention their names except among ourselves, and I will keep my word.
I don't know who the one exception would be unless it's Sinnett himself, but he's not faring too well right now.
This will probably be my last letter to you, dear Mr. Sinnett. It took me nearly a week to write this one. I am so feeble, and then I do not think I will have an opportunity. I cannot tell you why. Most probably you will not regret it. You cannot remain faithful much longer, living as you do in the world. Wow. Myers and the PRS, SPR, will laugh you to scorn. Hume, who goes to London in April, will set all against the Mahatmas and me.
Okay, so he's pretty well done his work in India. Now he's going to go to London to continue this destruction of the society. He's going to make sure he kills it completely.
Doesn't he have anything better to do?
No, he doesn't. He's wealthy, he's angry, he feels entitled, and no, he's got nothing better to do than destroy this society that attacked his ego.
It takes a different kind of men and women than you have in the London Lodge, with the exception of Miss Arundel and 2 or 3 others, to withstand such a persecution and storm. And all this because we have profaned truth by giving it out indiscriminately, and forgot the motto of the true occultist, to know, to dare, and to keep silent.
This was a saying that Eliphas Levi, the Kabbalist, came up with. She left out one word. It's to will, to know, to dare, and to keep silent. And the keep silent part is the most important part of this. If you have occult information, keep your mouth shut.
So we're naughty by sharing this out with the world.
We're not accepted chelas. We're foundering here and muddling our way along. So don't believe anything we say.
Test it in your life. You decide.
You decide.
This is crazy.
It is.
Goodbye then, dear Mr. Sinnett and Mrs. Sinnett. Whether I die in a few months or remain 2 or 3 years in solitude, I am as good as dead already. Jeez. Forget me and try to deserve personal communication with the master. Wow. Yeah. She's probably serious, but at this point, the door is not totally closed.
No, but remember, this is his last chance.
Right.
He's on that last chance. Yeah. He doesn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. I like how she says, try to deserve personal communication with the master.
Yeah, because he still hasn't taken to heart the need to purify himself.
Mm-hmm. That's why she says, how you live in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot remain faithful much longer living as you do in the world. Yeah, and we know what that means. We've talked about it many times. Then you shall be able to preach him, and if you succeed, as I succeeded, you shall be hooted and insulted as I was, and see whether you can stand it.
Yeah, that will be your reward. You'll get to be treated like I am.
Jeez. The Cooper Oakleys urged me to write to my aunt and sister and ask her to send me the design of the pearl brooch I sent them in 1880. I refuse. Why should I? If the brooch phenomenon is proven, then will come out some other phenomenon proved fraudulent by false witnesses.
Yeah, they'll never, ever, ever be satisfied because they don't want to be satisfied.
Yeah. I am tired, and so disgusted that death herself, with her first hours of horror, is preferable to this.
What? Say that again.
I am tired, and so disgusted that death herself, with her first hours of horror, is preferable to this.
So the first hours of death are, first of all, the life review process, but it's also the entrance into Kamaloka. So this is not something that K.H. shared with us, but she's saying that those first few hours are horror. We'll have to think about that some more as to why that would be.
Let the whole world, with the exception of a few friends and my Hindu occultists, believe me a fraud, I will not deny it, even to their faces. You can say so to Mr. Myers and others.
Mr. Myers was the president of the Society for Psychical Research and a theosophist, in name only.
I wonder if that society allows dual membership.
I'm sure they do.
Goodbye again. May your life be happy and prosperous, and Mrs. Sinnett's old age more healthy than her youth. Forgive me the annoyances I may have caused you, and forget. Yours to the end, H.P. Blavatsky.
Yours to the end. Never, ever, ever give up. May Mrs. Sinnett's old age be more healthy than her youth. Mrs. Sinnett and their son, Denny, both had precarious health their entire life. And KH worried about it. Sinnett worried about it. And HPB was always concerned about their health as well.
Wow.
So that's the state of affairs in March of 1885 in Adyar in India.
So this is 10 years into the Theosophical Society's existence.
Mm-hmm. And that's where they're at. It's on the verge of implosion and being completely destroyed because of one man's ego. But he is representative of numerous other Europeans. He's not the only one. There, like I said, Solovyov. There is also Franz Hartmann, who's got his ideas of what he can gain by the destruction of the TS, and he did his part. It's a sad situation, and it doesn't bode well for the future. We'll see whether or not Europeans are any different today. In fact, in our next session, we will talk about not just Europeans, but the entire world. What is the position of the world regarding the Theosophical Society today? Is it any better than it was in 1885? Are there numerous European chelas now among the chelas of the Mahatmas? We'll discuss that in the future. So stick with us. We're getting close to the end, and nobody wants to miss the final episode of Secrets of the Mahatma Letters to A.P. Sinnett.
Not that that's next week, though, the final episode.
No.
That's not what you're saying,
No.
right? Okay.
I don't mean to imply that. I mean, we're getting close to that session. There will be a final episode.
Yes.
But don't miss any of them.
Right.
Thank you for following along.
Thank you.